Welcome to Exhuming the Truth, the podcast where we delve into the mysterious worlds of cold cases, missing persons, true crime, and the fascinating science that is forensics. I'm forensic scientist and criminologist Asha Walther, and I am so thrilled to have you with me on this journey as we dance in the shadows of the world of crime, shining a light on scientific discovery while becoming another voice for those who need it most. So grab a drink and get comfortable while we jump into this episode together. Hi guys, happy Tuesday. There is so much going on this week. If I can even remember all of the things, I have literally got 3 different calendars/diaries happening with everything in it, but I never remember to read any of them. I don't know if anyone else has that problem, but therefore I annoyingly set alarms on my phone and my phone's just going off constantly. While I'm on the topic of phones, my work phone is, it's a story in itself, but it is having issues right now. It's not a good phone to begin with. I did get it just to take work calls and texts. However, it's not functioning as it should be right now. So I'm just using my personal phone and I'm trying to get back to everybody as quickly as I can. For housekeeping, I thought I'd go over a couple of cases that are kind of in the spotlight right now. There is the Ray and Jenny Kellett cold case. This is in WA, in the outback of WA. So this couple actually disappeared in March 2015. They were prospecting and they went on a trip to a remote area in WA's Midwest. Ray's body was actually found in an abandoned mine shaft, and later on the coroner determined his death to be a homicide, but Jenny was actually never found. But this has come back into the news because police have recently gone back to the area to search for more evidence, including Jenny's work boots, her gloves, and a key to their quad bike. So they've actually put a $2 million reward for information leading to solving that case, and this case is very much still open. And they said they're going to keep it open until they brought the killer to justice. So that's one that's in the spotlight right now. And then, of course, we have the cold case of Susan Goodwin. She went missing from Port Lincoln 23 years ago, and her family have been campaigning, hoping and praying for answers. And there's been a recent arrest and charge in her alleged murder, which is amazing. And this raises questions about how the investigation was handled over the years, particularly in the beginning, and whether evidence was preserved and what new information led to the charges, etc. So we can go over that in another episode. That's just another one to have a think about. I have to say I totally forgot about my oranges and lemons, my highs and lows of the week, and I think that's an important thing to do, so I'm going to get back into that. What has been the orange of my week was definitely having some time off. I took 3 days off. I just had the weekend. It was a long weekend here in WA. I think it was the King's birthday. I actually don't know. I have no idea what it was for, but I took it on. And that was really nice. I actually did nothing at all and have nothing exciting to report. I just enjoyed not looking at a screen all day. I love my work so much, but I get mentally tired just from looking at phone screens, computer screens, and things like that. The lemon of my week is definitely my work phone. Not cooperating, but hey, we have bigger things to work out. But yeah, that definitely just did not make life very easy in this last week. But also, while I'm on that, I have to say I'm really excited because I have been invited to participate in a hackathon, which is on the 10th of October, and it's actually with the Dutch police because I did a little bit of international work, as you may know. I did a couple of years on the International Cold Case Analysis Project, which was voluntary. I did a lot of voluntary work to get experience and things like that. And that was, I guess, affiliated with the Netherlands and the Dutch police. And they run a hackathon where they essentially, it's run by Microsoft, and they sort of teach you a few things and also get experts like myself and various others from around the globe to get together and try and sort out some cold cases and other things like that. So it's really exciting. I feel very privileged to be invited this year. Whether I will be able to go and attend, that's a whole other situation, but we'll get to that another time. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling on. This housekeeping, and today's episode is on the Beaumont children, which is very highly requested. Now, I've taken it upon myself, which you should be proud, as I am proud of myself, to go ahead and open up that little microphone on Google when you search a word and it pronounces it for you, to do that before I try and pronounce words that I don't know how to pronounce. So hopefully I get everything right this episode, but we'll see. All right, let's get into today's episode. Where are the Beaumont children? So let's go way back. My mum was just a couple of years old, so we're talking 1966. So January 26th, 1966, so the morning of the 26th of January, Jane Beaumont, age 9, Arnna Beaumont, age 7, and Grant Beaumont, age 4, all left their home in Somerton Park, Adelaide, to visit Glenelg Beach. They boarded a bus at approximately 10 a.m. Witnesses reported seeing the children at Collie Reserve and Wenzel's Cake Shop on Mosley Street. The kids were last seen in the afternoon in the company of a tall man with fair to light brown hair, a thin face, and a suntanned complexion estimated to be in his mid-30s. When the children failed to return home by 5 p.m, their parents Jim and Nancy Beaumont began searching the area. But by 5:30 p.m, they reported the children missing to the Glenelg police station. Now, between this reporting and, let's say, approximately 12 months, there was extensive search efforts, obviously not for the whole 12 months, but in those initial stages. They did extensive searching conducted by police at the time, including volunteers and the military, and they covered the beach and surrounding areas. So the children's belongings, including their beach towels and a bag, were also missing along with the children. Now, witnesses made reports and statements saying that they had seen the kids with a man who later disappeared. And in 1966, there was this Dutch psychic called Gerard. He claimed to have identified a burial site near the children's home. So this actually sparked the first excavations in this case, but this found no evidence, so that was just kind of debunked. Now, then the emerging theories kind of came out of the woodworks between the 70s and the 80s. Okay, so this obviously, they've done extensive searches, they put out appeals and what have you, and nothing has really come of it that was substantial enough after that psychic. Now, let's talk about this man called Harry Phipps. Okay, so between the 70s and the 80s, his name comes to light. Now, he was a late businessman and he owned, let's say, like a warehouse. They called this warehouse the Castleloy Foundry, which was in the area, and he quickly became a person of interest after being mentioned a few times. Now, because of these allegations, they kind of looked into it a little bit and realised that there was a family connection there, and his niece was actually married to the cousin of the kid's father. So Jim Beaumont, his cousin, was married to Harry Phipps's niece. So that was the familial connection. We'll come back to him in a minute. There was also in this time period some hoax letters. So in the late 60s, there were all these letters that kept coming forward that kind of said, it was from Jane and a man claiming to be the captor, and they were sending these letters to the Beaumont family. Of course, the Beaumont family are handing these in to police as they come, but these letters were later determined to be like one big hoax and written by a teenager at the time. So that was debunked as well. Now, fast forward 2013 to 2018. So 2013, they've done a search at the Castleloy site. So this is the warehouse that Harry Phipps owned, okay? So based on a couple of claims that there was a grave-like hole that had been dug around this warehouse area shortly after the kids disappeared, they thought, okay, let's go ahead and do an excavation. Now, obviously, they've got sort of credible information to actually act on this, but no remains were found. So that was 2013. Come 2018, they decided to do a second search. So they're searching at the same site, but not at the exact same location. So they've gone. What happened was, I believe there were two boys at the time of these kids going missing. These were just kids, okay? They're not adults. But they claim to have been instructed by Harry Phipps to come to the warehouse area and dig a hole for him. And they didn't come out until later when they were older and had seen all of this on TV and the media and things like that. And they're like, oh, crap, I think, we may have been instructed to dig a hole by this man, and it was because he may have done this. So they've come forward, and that sparked the second excavation in 2018. Now they've gone and basically used this technology that can tell any soil disturbances at quite a deep sort of length, I guess. So it was approximately, I think they said, I'm not going to say that, maybe 50 meters from where they initially excavated. I'm totally speculating there, but that could be what I read. But it was, quite a distance from the initial excavation site, and there had been concrete laid over the spot where the boys were like, okay, this was where it was. We can't confirm if what the boys are saying are true, or if they've kind of got this bias where they're like, oh, we have recollection of digging a hole for someone around this time and have kind of attributed their story to the story they're seeing. We don't know. But that's what sparked the 2018 search. And this yielded no new evidence. I do believe that one of the local universities were helping with this in this emerging technology to be able to say, okay, well, there was an anomaly here. There could have been a grave. We're not saying it was definitely a grave that was in this area, but there has been a spot that could have been upturned in this area. But again, yielded no new evidence. So let's fast forward again to February, March-ish 2025, so this year, and they've done a final excavation, and they've started at the former Castalloy factory site. Obviously, it's not still his business. Lots of time has passed. But we have the independent South Australian MLC, Frank. He decided to organise this because he claims that he had some credible information that was passed on to him that he passed on to detectives, which sparked this new excavation of the same area, but same site rather, but a different area on that site. Now, obviously, they're doing this excavation to uncover new evidence and ultimately find the children, but they wanted to do it before this land was sold to developers because I believe that's what they were intending. So come March the 1st this year, and the search was concluded and they found absolutely nothing, and they had actually moved nearly 10,000 tonnes of soil in this search, so they did quite a big, extensive search. Like I said, this man, Frank, had said he got this credible information. He's passed it on to police. I'd be interested to know what that is. And he was quite determined to find answers about their fate, but we'll come back to that as well. Now let's talk what evidence we have and what theories there were. And if you want to read a bit more about this or listen or watch rather a couple of documentaries, I've listed them here. Of course, I'm going to give you as much as I can. We're going to do a part 2 on this as well, where I'm giving you a bit more. But in terms of evidence and theories, okay, we have the witness recounts, obviously. Now, a number of people came up saying that they saw the kids, but then, of course, the accounts of seeing the kids with the man who was described as, tall, tanned, and in his mid-30s. We've then got old mate Harry Phipps, who owned this foundry, who became a person of interest. This is, of course, where the excavations have taken place. Ultimately, I would really love them to disclose what that credible tip-off was that Frank had so we could make a better judgment, but that's obviously not an option at this time, although I do think that the public should be made aware of that. I think it would help rather than hinder the case. But if we go into the hoax letters, of course, we can just kind of scratch that off the board because that was obviously a bored teenager looking to stir the pot. Now, the books that there is The Saturn Man, Uncovering the Mystery of the Missing Beaumont Children. That's by Alan Whitaker and Stuart Mullins. Then Alan Whitaker's written another book called Searching for the Beaumont Children, Australia's Most Famous Unsolved Mystery. And then there's a couple of documentaries, The Beaumont Children, What Really Happened, and then There Were None, which is a separate one. And then, of course, there's news reports for days if you want to jump on the internet. I just want to say, too, there is the major crimes superintendent. His name's Des Bray. And he actually came out and emphasised that there was over 100 suspects in this case over the years. I just want to throw that in there. Over 100 suspects. So I think releasing that quote-unquote credible information would be very beneficial for the public to be able to come forward if they had new information. So you can obviously read and watch those if you're inclined to. But what haven't you heard, okay, about the Beaumont children case? And I've just given you the timeline and the rundown of, like, what is this case? What haven't you heard? And I'll tell you what you haven't heard. Forensic insight, profiling, and investigative challenges. Everyone knows the timeline, the suspects, the evidence. But what can modern forensics and criminology tell us about this 1966 mystery? And what can we apply now that we have not yet and that we couldn't back then? Just to give you a tiny little glimpse into what's happening in our second episode for the Beaumont children, we're going to go into family allegations. Essentially, we're going to be talking about Hayden Phipps. Now, because so much time has passed, we obviously have our main man of interest, Harry Phipps. And like I said, the police have come forward saying we've got over 100 suspects. Harry Phipps seems to be a big one. They seem to have a lot of quote-unquote credible information and tip-offs about Harry Phipps and, if not, his warehouse area. Now, Hayden Phipps is his son, and we're going to talk about the allegations that his son has made, what he claims, his recollection of his childhood with Harry Phipps as his father, lots of things like that. Some stunning claims against his father that centre around the Beaumont children. Hayden actually does go on to claim he did see the Beaumont children that day. Now, it was Australia Day that day, so he does remember that day. He does remember seeing his dad that day with the children. So I'm going to go into detail about what he's said about that and the various times he's spoken about it and all of that information into one, so you don't have to look it up. And also what he had told his second wife about Harry Phipps and the Beaumont children. He also talks about his childhood with Harry as his dad and what he was subject to as a child. We also have another girl who comes out and speaks about Harry Phipps and her encounters with him. We also talk about what was given to the three children by their mother before they went off that day, and how that relates to the case, and a couple of little bits of inconsistencies there. My big part of what we discuss in part 2 is actually the purse. Now, Jane Beaumont actually carried a purse with her on the day of her disappearance. I want to tell you again, as I said, they went off to the beach that day with items like this beach towel. Jane had her purse. No items have been recovered, but somebody comes forward and actually says, I saw this purse at a person's home, and I'm going to tell you where they saw that, whose house it was at, and what happened to that purse and why it couldn't be recovered. I actually also am going to go super deep into this because I'm very invested, and I've gone back and even got the temperatures of the day that they went missing and following. And I've done a bit of a forensic analysis on that and how that ties in with if, how, why or why not that would have contributed to any soil disturbances or anything like that. But what I can tell you is that overall this case contains a very, very high volume of very, very low quality information. There is a lot of circumstantial evidence here. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence linking Harry Phipps to their disappearance, but we have to have a look at everything in its entirety before we make a judgment. So I hope that you join me at the end of our second part. I'm going to tell you what I think happened to them and a very likely scenario that could have happened, and obviously give you a detailed brief on how I came to that conclusion. And maybe also go over my suggestions for this case should that be listened to or taken on by anybody, which I'm sure it won't be, but you can listen to it if you jump on our part 2 of the Beaumont children. If you have any questions that you want covered in that episode, which is going to come on Thursday, please make sure that you send them in so that I can answer them in the next podcast, or I can even just do it on our social accounts. I have also put together some photos and a bit of a map situation with all of the key points of interest, which I will share after I air the second episode. So I hope you join us, and thank you so much for being here. I hope you have enjoyed it here. You can subscribe to stay up to date across all platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. You can help us out to reach our goal so we can register as a not-for-profit by subscribing to our paid episodes, which are on Spotify, or by making a donation to allow us to help more families. You can also join in on case discussions and make case requests on our Facebook group or on our Facebook page, which you can find the link to in our podcast notes. But as always, stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, trust your instincts and keep seeking the truth.